Welcome back to the Size Eyes podcast and the Casually Profound series, and within that, the sub-series, Someday It's Today. Adam Kamak and I are back on this series for state number 9 out of 50. We are in beautiful Mobile, Alabama at Nova Espresso. Recommended to us by one of your friends?
No, recommended to me via Google search.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes.
Also a pretty good friend for us.
Some days. Some days. Although, depending on what Google does with the data, that may be a friend that betrays, but that would be another discussion for another time.
Yes. But we're back, state number 9, on this road trip. We're recording this is the third one out of 3 days. When you guys see it, published twice, we'll see when it actually drops.
Yes.
Hopefully more often than twice a month, like you've been joking about. But it's a beautiful day out here in the morning, turning afternoon.
Absolutely.
Of Mobile, Alabama. So appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you joining us. This episode, we're going to be talking about the Millennial Dream. The Millennial Dream. So it might be a term that you may or may not heard about before. So I'd love for you to share about what is the Millennial Dream for you, Adam, and where you heard about it, or how you came up with it, or what your connotations are of it, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. Before we do that, though, since we are in the great state of Alabama.
Oh, okay. Are we starting off with this?
Yes. I think we need to work in some Alabama trivia.
Yes.
I feel like this is something that we should be adding to these episodes to add to the fact that we're recording in different states. So we'll start out with 2 trivia questions. We'll sprinkle some others in along the way.
All right.
First trivia question. Where is the main campus of the University of Alabama located?
Tuscaloosa, TCL.
Correct.
Airport code TCL.
Correct. 1 for 1. Although their airport has not had commercial flights in about 20 years.
I see.
Ended long ago.
Okay.
Question 2.
All right.
No Alabamian has ever served as president of the United States. The highest ranking position an Alabamian has ever had in the federal government was vice president. There is one Alabamian who has been vice president of the United States. Who was he?
Oh, no. I'm going to say, all right. I don't know any Alabamians. Bob Dole.
Bob Dole is from your home state of Kansas.
Okay, yeah.
Dole also was never vice president.
Okay.
He was the vice presidential running mate for Gerald Ford. So when Nixon resigned, Ford, as having recently become VP, became president. And under the terms of the 25th Amendment, selected and was approved by the Senate that Nelson Rockefeller, the erstwhile governor of New York, could be his vice president.
Yeah.
But then Rockefeller was not on the ticket when Ford ran for re-election in 1976. Bob Dole was. They lost to Carter and Mondale. And then Dole was the Republican candidate in 96, losing to Clinton. No, the
wait.
Alabamian...
Is Henry Clay?
No, Henry Clay was from Kentucky.
Okay.
He also was never vice president. He was Secretary of State.
Okay.
And a failed presidential nominee on multiple occasions.
All right.
So the answer, I assume you haven't heard of this individual, William King. William R. King. He was a congressman from North Carolina, senator from Alabama.
Okay.
And then he was the vice president under Franklin Pierce, serving for a few months in 1853 before dying in office. And one of the things that is best known about William R. King was that he lived in the same house for 13 years with James Buchanan, who was the 15th president, 1857 to 1861. Buchanan, the only president to never be married. And there's speculation that Buchanan may have been homosexual and may have been in a homosexual relationship with King up until King's passing in 1853, about 4 years before Buchanan became president. So when Buchanan was president, his niece Harriet Lane acted as first lady.
I see.
Since he didn't have a spouse. Anyways, we haven't had a lengthy digression for a while.
I know. I was going to say, everyone got a history lesson, including me.
Yes.
So we'll have William King.
William King. William R.
Billy
King.
King.
That's someone different. So we'll sprinkle in some more trivia throughout, hopefully. But in answer to your original question about the Millennial Dream, so I
Yeah.
think this is a concept that we're all intuitively familiar with, even if we haven't thought about it in these terms. But I heard that particular term when I attended the Craft and Commerce put on by ConvertKit in Boise in June. ConvertKit rebranding to Kit.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's a company that seems to like changing their name.
What was it after the conference? Or
They
or did
announced
they announce it at the
at the
conference?
conference that they were rebranding to Kit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
A few years ago, they attempted another name change. I forget what the name they were switching to was, but it was met with a lot of backlash and criticism, so they decided to remain ConvertKit.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, at Craft and Commerce, there were several speakers, as is typical of a conference, and one of the main stage speakers that everyone, all the conference attendees, listened to was a woman named Susie Bullock. Started a company called Hey Grill Hey, or I think she would want us to say Hey Grill Hey. Um, uh, but in giving some of her backgrounds with how she came to start her company, she talked about the Millennial Dream, as she termed it, and some of the pitfalls. This is a concept that you and I have discussed before in plenty of private conversations. I've talked about the notion of life as not being linear. The Millennial Dream fits in with this notion that life is linear, right? And she, of course, was pushing back against the Millennial Dream, as have we. So the way that she presented this was that as a kid you go to school and the expectation is you get good grades because it's going to lead you to the next place you want to be in life, which is going to a good college. And you do what your teachers tell you to get good grades as a kid. Then you do what your professors tell you to get good grades in college as a young adult. And because you do that, that's going to lead you to a good job in the corporate world. And you do what your boss tells you in the corporate world, or what clients tell you. Climb your way up the corporate ladder. Somewhere in there, hopefully not too young, hopefully not too old of an age, hopefully not too young of an age as well, I suppose. You meet someone, get married to them, have kids with them, raise a family, live happily ever after to some degree, and then eventually, on one glorious day, your bank account and your number of years in the corporate world align, allowing you to retire, and you live out your years of retirement. It's a very linear path. One thing leads to the next. There are no steps back. There are no shortcuts. There are no ways around it. It's a very linear path. That's what she had been sold. That was the path that she was on. That was the path that her husband was on. And I think we would probably say that's the path that we were on, even if we weren't thinking about it in those terms. That's the path that we were on for much of our lives to this point. And I know we've talked about previously that I'm a former teacher, still involved with working with students, coaching students, with academic extracurriculars, helping students prepare for college applications, things like that. And I think that's the path that a lot of those students I've worked with are on. So I thought this would make for a good conversation topic. The concept of the Millennial Dream, how this compares to what previous generations may have experienced, pitfalls in the Millennial Dream, how we ourselves have experienced the Millennial Dream or have not experienced it, our own criticisms and pushback, and where this concept might be headed for future generations. So what are your thoughts on this construct of the Millennial Dream? What have your experiences been? And then I'll share some more of my experiences and have some more Alabama trivia questions.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I'm waiting for trivia.
Yes.
Yeah, the Millennial Dream, I feel like maybe it's the American dream superimposed on our generation, where we're just trying to attach it to an age. It is the American dream that I was taught, which was basically the middle class life. And maybe that's the dream, like middle, where...
The house with the white picket fence.
Right, yeah. Because I think previously, fact check me on this, history buff, but with the rise of the middle class, that necessarily wasn't there as much,
right,
with upper class and lower class, and then the creation of the middle class. And so people could feel like they could elevate in class and status going from the lower class to the middle class.
Right.
And it's like, oh yeah, I can do that, and I don't have to be a millionaire to enjoy a comfortable life. And I could immigrate to a country that allows me to do that.
Well, not even, and sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but not even that I don't have to be a millionaire to achieve a comfortable life. I think for a lot of people, the idea of themselves being a millionaire is something that's not even on their radar. That's something that those other people, those rich people whose group I'm not a part of and never will be a part of, that's something they do. They don't think about the possibility of doing that themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of like the middle class mindset. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right.
Because that has allowed us, my family, to live in this middle class status and place for my lifetime. So that's the dream that I was sold. And like it's, for the most part, it's been really good, right? Like I'm able to enjoy the luxuries of being able to travel, luxuries of having a stable household, luxuries of like going to a well-known college that has status, and so this millennial dream of the get good grades, college, job, kids, house, retirement, etc. So my parents never actually told me that directly, but I think it was like implied, because I would say that was their dream, coming from, I wouldn't say impoverished backgrounds, but more rural backgrounds in India. So it was a dream to go from to study abroad and to work abroad and to make a name for yourself, to go from smaller towns in India that lived more rural to, hey, we have a stable middle class income, like a job. And part of that, I think it was the immigration status and visa status, where you weren't necessarily allowed to explore your full passions, because even now, I know a lot of people who if you're not a citizen, or even if you don't have your green card, you have to get a job that is related to your degree. And so people who did an accounting and finance major have to find a job that is related to that degree. Otherwise, you're getting basically deported back to your country. So, I think that was a big part of it as well, where he's like, all right, like degree and then job related to that degree. That is a pretty linear way of thinking, and I don't blame them. Like that was the system. So, this millennial dream, I guess goes beyond millennials, because I think it's because my parents are not millennials.
Right.
So that's been my experience so far, where it wasn't explicit from my parents or anyone, but pretty implicit in like the media that I consumed, my surroundings, the people that I talked with, and then eventually just drinking enough Kool-Aid where it was like, oh wow, this is it. And then until I realized and thought for myself, oh, maybe there's other things out there. Because like the analogy of like the fish being in the water, like the fish is born in the water, lives in the water, dies in the water. What's the one thing the fish doesn't know? It's the water. So it's like you're just surrounded by it at all times, and you don't even know it's there. So a lot of digressions there, but that's my initial thoughts about the millennial dream and my relation with it.
Yeah. Lots to build on from there for sure. But before we do that,
please,
we have some more Alabama trivia questions.
We should incorporate this in every estate.
Absolutely.
Oh, please.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why do you think I'm pushing this so hard? Absolutely. All right. Which city in Alabama is home to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center?
Huntsville.
Huntsville is correct.
HSV.
HSV is the airport code. Yes. In fact, there's a minor league baseball team in Huntsville in the Huntsville area called the Rocket City Trash Pandas.
Trash pins.
Yeah, Trash Pandas.
Trash pandas.
Yes,
okay.
Building off of this NASA heritage.
I see.
All right, which prominent German-American rocket scientist was in charge of the Marshall Space Flight Center during a significant chunk of his lifetime.
Probably only a couple options
So
there.
this is like post-World War II for
Right.
about 20 years.
Werner von Braun.
That is correct.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's
and
go.
The main arena in Huntsville is named the Von Braun Center in his
Okay.
honor. All right. What are the two most commonly used nicknames for the state of Alabama? Like how Texas would be the Lone Star State or Kansas
Okay.
would be the Sunflower State. There are two that are used a
Alabama.
lot.
The Roll Tide State.
Maybe that would be number 3 or 4.
Huh. What is Alabama? Sweet Home Alabama.
Which is a song by Leonard Skinner.
Okay. What is Alabama? I don't know.
So the Yellowhammer State,
Okay.
I think that's the official one. And then Heart of Dixie is an informal used
Okay.
one.
Gotcha. Can't say I've probably heard of those, but
Yeah.
you know, it's
I
not.
feel like Heart of Dixie is used more often,
Yeah. Okay.
but Yellowhammer State is more official.
Yeah, because I've never. It's not as prominent as like the Lone Star State or
Right.
others.
The Golden State.
Empire State.
Empire
Yeah.
State, yeah. All right. More Alabama trivia later
Oh,
in
good.
this conversation.
Good.
Are you enjoying the trivia?
I am excited. I'm
Excellent.
excited for the next little trivia break.
Excellent. Yeah, so there's a lot that you said in your pre-trivia response. Lots to digest there. One thing I want to comment on. You said that there's nothing bad about this middle class dream, this millennial dream, and that's true, right? Different people have different goals. Different people have different things that they're seeking out of life. Different people have different things that they hope to accomplish. They have different priorities and different things they value. So for some people, that path is absolutely the correct one. Now, it's generally not as linear and as straightforward and as easy as it sounds, but something resembling that path is the correct one. For other people, that may not be the correct one, right? It really depends on the person and their circumstances and what they're prioritizing, what they're after, what they're seeking in life. You also talked about your family background influencing your implicit aims to fulfill this millennial dream through much of your adolescence and younger years. We're still younger, but younger than we are now.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing would apply to me. I think this is pretty common for a lot of Americans, right? We're influenced by our parents, influenced by our grandparents, right? So with both of my parents, that was kind of the mold, the mindset that they were fitting into growing up, right? My dad was the grandson of immigrants and the son of individuals who grew up during the Great Depression. So the idea of having this middle-class lifestyle, of having stable employment, that's something that his parents, my grandparents as kids, they didn't know because up to a quarter of the country was out of work during times in their childhood. And then, also being younger when World War II was going on.
Yeah.
Right. So lots of turmoil and instability. For my mom's part, her dad fought in World War II. Was growing up during the Depression, son of European immigrants. I'll add my dad's dad, my other grandfather, who I referenced earlier, also involved in the war effort during World War II, working on the Manhattan Project, which that'd be a separate topic for another day. And then my mom's mom came to the U.S. escaping the Nazis. Jewish. My whole family's Jewish. From a little German town near the Swiss border. She and her parents, my great-grandparents, are able to escape. Her brother as well, come to the U.S. So, in all cases, my grandparents had experienced, instability and turmoil and uncertainty in their youth, whether it be from the war, from World War II, from the Great Depression, trying to flee, escape the Nazis. So it was very appealing to have that sort of middle-class lifestyle with the house and the house in the stable community and the stable job and having that sort of linear formulaic path. That's not necessarily the path that my parents ended up living, even if that's implicitly what they wanted for me. there were certainly moments where they were not following that path. As happens with most people, right? As we've said, life isn't linear. But even if I wasn't thinking about it as in terms of this like multi-step process, it was certainly a part of my upbringing and a part of the upbringings of everyone that I knew, the kids I was friends with at school, kids in my neighborhood, cousins and relatives. They were all going to follow this path. You try to get good grades, you do what your teachers tell you, get into a good college, get good grades, do what your professors tell you, corporate world, do what your bosses tell you, move up the ladder, get married, have kids, retire. So the idea of not following that path, it was never really presented to me as an option, at least not when I was a little kid. It wasn't until I got to college, initially studying computer science, but not wanting to study computer science, not liking being a computer science major or the prospect of working in computer science. Not really sure why I was in college either. Went to college because, as Colin Hanks's character says in the movie Orange County, it's what you do after high school, right? It was never presented to me that there was another option, so I did it because that's what I was always told I was going to do. And then I needed to study something practical. I was encouraged, given that I had some background in it, to study computer science. And it wasn't until I got disenchanted by studying computer science, being in college, that I was really reevaluating, why am I here? And then started seeking out, finding alternate perspectives, voices who were suggesting other ideas that didn't have to involve college, didn't have to involve traditional employment, didn't have to involve following this linear path. Maybe had some elements of the linear path, but also people who were, could be a little rawer. Is that a word, rawer?
Sure.
More raw in their stories, and talking about some of the pitfalls, talking about divorce and businesses that were initially successful that then later failed, and health problems, and like some of these other roadblocks that are very real for so many Americans and so many people around the world that are not a part of this this stereotypical millennial dream, right? When we're told this as a kid, we don't think like, what if we're significantly in debt? Or what if we're on the verge of bankruptcy and we don't know how we're going to pay the mortgage? Or what if we're, in a marriage that is not going well? Or what if we have health problems? Or what if our loved ones have health problems? Or what if we get fired, get laid off, get a pink slip? We're not told any of these things are possibilities. And of course, you and I haven't experienced several of the things on that list yet, most of the things on that list yet. But, they're all very real things, and they're very real things that a lot of people consider. In some cases that are worth considering, even if they haven't happened yet. Obviously, I wouldn't say go into a marriage thinking that, oh my gosh, this could end in divorce. That's not what I'm saying. But, recognition that I'm in good health now. Hopefully I'll be in good health for a very long time, but let's take advantage of the fact that I'm in good health now, right? I'm not under a pile of debt now. I'm not facing bankruptcy now. Hopefully those things never happen, but let's be grateful of the fact that I'm not in that position and try to act in such a way where I'm cognizant of that fact, right? So it was never presented that there were alternate paths and that there were these roadblocks and these other potential variables looming to consider. And I guess some of the reason for that is that we're kids. We don't have life experience. Pretty much everyone we know is either someone that we're related to or someone who grew up in a similar background as us, similar location, similar interests, similar schools, same teachers, same classes. It's a very narrow range of things that we know and are available to us when we're children. And it's not until we get out there in the world that there are additional life experiences, and it's really possible to have that in most cases. Not every case, but in a lot of cases, that's really when those additional variables and data points are on the table. And having this millennial dream that we've talked about, it's different than what other generations have experienced, right? Like we talked about generations growing up during the Depression or growing up with world wars, or who are immigrating and uprooting their lives and their families' lives to go live in a different part of the world. Very different experiences. Even for people who were living out kind of the stereotypical dream of previous generations in the U.S., a lot of these dreams we might think of as graduating from high school rather than college, getting a good paying factory job out of high school rather, and working at that factory for decades, retiring with the gold watch. That doesn't exist anymore. Most people don't stay at their jobs for 30, 40 years anymore. And in most situations, that opportunity doesn't even exist. There's some where it does, right? Like I talked about being a former teacher. It is possible that you get hired as a teacher when you're 21, 22, 23, and then you work at that school for the next 35 years. That does exist. But in a lot of cases, even if someone wants to stay with the same company, with the same employer, in the same line of work for 30, 40 years, that opportunity doesn't exist anymore, especially the high-paying factory jobs out of college, right? That whole construct, for a variety of reasons, isn't really there anymore. So this will continue to evolve with future generations, but it's a narrative that some people live out and works for some people and doesn't for other people, and that they're unable to live out.
Yeah. Well, so you kind of mentioned it there with like different generations. So we talked about the previous generations. You have a unique experience of being around people who are in generations younger than us, Gen Z, and I don't know if you encountered any Gen Alpha folks.
I mean, encounter like very briefly, but the Gen Alpha kids are not ones that I've worked with.
Right.
They're a little too young for that.
Yeah. So what, in your experience, what have you seen as, is there a shift in what that dream is? Whether, let's remove this millennial labeling of it, of this American dream, of this dream in general, into this Gen Z dream or the young dream. Have you seen any shift in it? What is it? Is it still, how similar is it to what we've talked about so far?
Well, before we do that,
No.
It's time for some more Alabama trivia. This author...
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no, he says. This author of To Kill a Mockingbird is from the state of Alabama.
Harper Lee.
That is correct.
Let's go.
Do you know what her second novel was that was published many years later?
I don't.
Go Set a Watchman.
Oh.
Next, this basketball player who is a star of Inside the NBA.
Who he played for.
Who epically fails at who he played for. Won an NBA MVP and an Olympic gold medal, but failed to win an NBA championship.
He loves the women from San Antonio.
They eat those churros on the Riverwalk. Did you see last year when he asked Victor Wembanyama how to say churro in French, and Wembanyama never heard the word before?
Right, yeah. I saw that. Mr. Chuck Barkley.
Yeah, Charles Barkley is correct.
Yes.
One more. This prominent two-state athlete who played for the Kansas City Royals and the Los Angeles Raiders, like Charles Barkley, is an Auburn Tiger and is from Bessemer, Alabama.
Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson is correct.
Let's go. I know more Alabamans than I thought.
There you go. More Alabama trivia coming up shortly.
Yes.
How have I seen this construct of the linear path millennial dream change with Gen Z? Really not that much. I mean, first of all, we have to recognize that most of the Gen Z students I've worked with are children of Gen X parents who were very much experiencing this millennial dream. In fact, in a lot of ways, more similar to the millennial dream that you and I have experienced than what maybe the baby boomers experienced, where for baby boomers, maybe you could go get that factory job out of high school and retire with the gold watch. Like maybe that was still something that was on the table. By the time Gen X was being born, by the time they were around, these 80s babies, that wasn't really a thing anymore. And it was more of the way that we conceive this now of good grades in school, go to college, corporate job. So I think the Gen Z, in a lot of cases, they still think of it in those ways. There are always some outliers and exceptions, but a lot of them are still thinking of it in terms of get good grades in school, go to a good college, so on and so forth. So I don't know that it's changed significantly, which is interesting because there are way more ways to make money now than ever before. There are way more potential careers than ever before. There are way more things that someone can do than ever before. There are way more ways to learn a skill and come into information than ever before. MIT has all their coursework available for free online. All the great books of Western civilization, or at least the vast majority of them, are available for free online, right? Like everything that William Shakespeare ever wrote, available for free online. There's so many things that, at one point would have required uh, an expensive education or at least going to the public library that we have right here in our pocket every single day. And there are way more ways to make money, way more ways to start a business, way more ways to get clients, to get customers, to market to clients and customers than ever before. So I think eventually those things will be kind of baked in, and this construct will change. I think the idea of being an entrepreneur is something that's more widely accepted now than it used to be. This is something I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about. When he was growing up in the 80s as a terrible student, who, while getting D's and F's in school, was also selling way more lemonade than everyone else, selling way more baseball cards than everyone else, helping grow his dad's liquor store, like doing all these entrepreneurial things outside of school. He says that, maybe with one exception, pretty much all of his teachers and his friends' parents thought he was going to be a failure in life because of how poorly he was doing in school. I think now there is more recognition that that kid that's selling way more lemonade than everyone else in the neighborhood, or that kid that's setting up stands at baseball card trade shows and outselling everyone else, right? That kid has a future as a business person, as an entrepreneur. And there are way more kids wanting to be entrepreneurs, or who are at least cognizant of entrepreneurial concepts and ideas to some degree, at least on some sort of intuitive level. So I think that there has been a little bit of a change in that, from that standpoint. I do hear more students who are following the millennial path, but then instead of working their way up the corporate ladder as being the goal, for a lot of them, I do hear more talking about they want to get that corporate job, that traditional job, that good job, quote unquote, out of college. But they don't talk about the end goal as being an executive, working their way up to be an executive at a company. They talk about the end goal as starting their own business and building their own company. Maybe they're not thinking in terms of doing that when they're 18 or 20 or 25, but their idea is, they'll go work in the corporate world, work their way up a little bit, build some connections, and then build their own company. I didn't hear that as much from our generation. I hear that more from Gen Z. So maybe that's a wrinkle that's been changed. I think the notion of retirement is probably one that's not talked about as much with Gen Z students. Obviously people who are in their teens and 20s generally aren't thinking about retirement anyways. But I think probably with baby boomers or Gen Xers, there was this idea that someday they are going to be able to retire. And I think for people who are our age, younger than us, probably this recognition that maybe we're paying into Social Security, but realistically, what's that going to look like by the time we'd actually be getting it? Corporate pension plans are far less common nowadays than they used to be. Teacher pension plans for government employees are still pretty common, but private sector pension plans are pretty much non-existent. They don't really factor into people's calculations. And even with a teacher pension plan, much like Social Security, what is that really going to look like 30 years from now? Right? What's the value of the dollar going to look like? How much money is going to be available in those funds? So I think maybe that aspect of it, the retirement piece, the idea that you get to be in your 60s and then you can just go play with your grandkids and go travel. Maybe that's something that's not as relevant and not as realistic within that construct of the so-called millennial dream. And even if younger people our age, are not thinking about that quite as much, I think there is some sort of intuitive understanding that they're going to have to work longer into their lives if they follow the traditional path, that retiring in their early to mid-60s may not be as much of an option. But I think there also is probably an intuitive recognition that a lot of jobs that are available today or have been available for a while are not going to be available for as long. Of course, this is something that's all common throughout human nature, right? The Industrial Revolution destroyed a lot of agriculture jobs, right? And then we've seen the decline of the factory jobs and the shrinking and economic declines of various, factory-based communities, especially in the American Rust Belt, but all throughout the country. But I think there's also the understanding that as artificial intelligence grows and machine learning grows, there are going to be other jobs that are displaced by that. And that would set up a whole nother discussion. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Right? I would generally argue that it's a good thing. There will be a restructuring, right? But will be way more productivity and way more opportunity. Just as there are far fewer people working on farms, riding tractors, working in the fields, far fewer people working factory jobs, manual labor jobs, and I think that that's generally been a good thing for wealth and prosperity and human flourishing. Right, AI and machine learning in the long run will probably have the same impacts, but there will certainly be people displaced and upset in the short run, and their concerns are obviously very, very valid and very, very real and concerning. But I think there's a recognition among younger people that maybe some of the jobs that they've seen their parents, their grandparents work aren't going to be there as there are continual changes, developments in technology. So I guess within the broader construct of the so-called millennial dream that still probably is real, those are some things that I would hit on. A little more recognition of entrepreneurship and more people wanting to build a business. Recognition that retirement as we've known it is probably not feasible for most, not going to be there for most. And recognition that there will be continued adjustments to the labor force to what jobs are available as we see artificial intelligence, machine learning, other technologies take greater hold and continue to take shape.
Yeah. Yeah, this like concept of retirement, like, I think like this linear path, there is it's almost like delayed gratification aspect to it where, okay, like do all the work and then enjoy the rewards.
You don't get to have fun when you're in your 30s and 40s. You get to have fun when you're in your 60s and 70s.
Right. And so now
who knows what your body and your mind are going to look like when you get to that point anyways.
Yeah. So now
hopefully great health and acuity, but who knows?
Yeah. So now I think the dream is aided by social media is the flexibility and the ability to travel, whether local, like within a city, within a country, or internationally as well, where, okay, like, can I have a job that allows me the flexibility to travel / work from anywhere I want, and set the hours that I want. So I think that's a big part of the dream now with millennials and, younger now as well. It's like all these influencers who are influencing people who want to set that up. And for some people, like, they still want to be in an Overland Park. They still want to be in a Katy, Texas, like wherever these cities are, in Alpharetta, Georgia, wherever, where, yeah, like I have a good education, I have a good high school, setting up for a good college, etc. But I think the big part of the dream now is the flexibility, and even like from a renting or living perspective, apartments give you more of a flexibility than owning a house does. It almost feels like too big of a commitment. Where
people are also getting married later. They're having kids later. They're buying houses later if they buy houses at all.
Right. And then you feel a little bit behind sometimes when you see other people buying the house, getting the car, getting married, having kids at an age, like at the more of a traditional younger age. And then you feel behind, and then it actually kind of fuels like your actions. And so like that's what I've kind of noticed as well, is like flexibility as a big aspect of our of the dreams for people our age and younger as well. Yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
About the so-called millennial dream, but before we do that,
yes, well, a different question and then another question.
Some Alabama trivia. This baseball player, who was the home run king up until Barry Bonds passed him, was from Mobile.
That's right. Henry Hank Aaron.
That is correct.
Yeah.
This baseball player, considered by some to be the greatest player of all time, standout center fielder for the New York and San Francisco Giants, tail end of his career also briefly on the New York Mets, is the godfather of Barry Bonds, hit 660 career home runs, and is quite well known for a center field catch at the Polo Grounds in New York in the 1954 World Series.
Yes. Willie Mays.
Say hey, Willie Mays.
Say hey.
Say hey,
Say
Willie
hey, kid.
Mays. Say hey, kid, yes.
Very nice. 2 for 2.
Yeah. Right? Look at that.
I know my baseball trivia.
We can put that to the test if you want.
I know my.
We'll do that right now.
Ah, oh no.
So Frank Thomas,
Okay.
two-time MVP for the Chicago White
Yeah.
Sox, he went to Auburn, and when he made the Baseball Hall of Fame, he was the first person to have played in the SEC to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. However, there was one other person who played at an SEC school to be in the Hall of Fame. There was someone who played at the University of Alabama prior to the formation of the SEC, back when Alabama and all the other inaugural members of the SEC were members of the Southern Conference.
Okay.
Who was this Cleveland Indian who played at the University of Alabama pre-formation of the SEC in the 1920s?
1920s.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
I'll be shocked if you get this.
Satchel Paige.
Joe Sewell.
I've not
All
heard
right.
of him.
Yes. Anyway, so now I have to remember what my question was.
Oh no.
All right. So we've touched on this already, of course. But what are some pitfalls? What are some areas of pushback or potentially even criticism that you have of this construct of the millennial path, and some reason, or the millennial dream, and some reasons why you think this may not be as well suited for individuals trying to find their way in the world now as it may have been at one time?
Some reasons for pushback.
We've obviously talked about this some,
Yeah.
and some of this has come in my rambling responses. So let's get a rambling response from you on this.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like it just doesn't fit in today's world as much. So part of it is like you almost need both, like, everyone to fit their roles, right? And like you need people who work at a coffee shop, right? You need people to work retail jobs.
Division of labor.
Right. Yeah. And so I think part of it is there's been a glorification of the blue collar jobs, or is that right? No,
white collar
glorification of the white collar jobs
at the expense of the blue collar jobs.
Yeah, at the expense of the blue collar jobs. And you're like, because there's been traditionally more, or increasingly more, money in the white collar jobs, so then people look down on the blue collar jobs, where I wish there was more equity there, both maybe financially and like perception wise. So like the trades are a great example of I think places of it's being underinvested. But I think now, for example, I met a company based in Kansas City, I forget the name, where they have trading specifically like for people who've graduated high school or even have other jobs but want to transition into trades, and then they actually set up those people with the companies who've partnered in, and so it's like a very quick and easy talent management kind of portal.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that, I feel like that has existed for a long time.
And I've heard of other programs where rather than young people going to college, out of high school, they'll go enter this program there where there's almost like an internship, apprenticeship component that sets you up for a full-time job with a startup or with a smaller company on a much faster timetable.
Right. And then, so then there's almost a stigma of having to go to college as well, to, especially if you know that you're not going to go into a white collar type of job. I think it's great I think it's just being exposed to these options of having an apprenticeship, an internship, a shadowing experience, whatever that is, to actually experience what a day in the life, a week in the life actually looks like for other positions. So I think just the exposure in general and an experience with that exposure is missing in whatever dreams people have, because I don't know what it was like to be a computer science major, or to do a job that is in computer science or in math or in marketing or being your own boss as an entrepreneur. So I wish I had, and maybe there were those opportunities, I just turned a blind eye to them. So I wish, and I'm being exposed now that I know that those exist. I want to help share that message and share these opportunities. Like, hey, like you don't have to go to college if you kind of know what you want to do, and experience that. Like someone that I've worked with, he had a lawn care business from like when he was a teenager, and was very successful financially doing that until he was 18. So like he was making bank, you know, like Topper's drivers
You said it,
until
not
he
me.
was 18,
We
19,
both
20.
thought it.
Yeah. If you call Topper's Pizza in Charlotte, North Carolina, they'll say that.
At Toppers, our drivers are making bank.
Correct. So it's, I think the exposure, so the pitfall is the lack of exposure of these experiences out there. So the funny thing is we have more information ready and available for us than ever before,
Right.
but somehow we're in this algorithm that feeds us like BS.
It takes a certain amount of independent thinking and creativity, along with action and diligence, to embrace the opportunities and the information that's out there. It's very easy to fall into the path of what everyone else is doing, this kind of groupthink that sets in. Letting society decide for you, letting your parents decide for you, letting your teacher decide for you, letting your friends decide for you, letting your neighbors, your relatives decide for you. It takes a certain amount of independent thinking and creativity and courage and effort and action to recognize that there are alternatives and to do anything about it, and to use the information and those potential experiences that are out there that weren't out there previously, and to fit that in and use it to your benefit.
Yeah, 100%. And like this, going back to an earlier point or a theme of like this linear path, I think there is this, we have to embrace, well, so the linear path optimizes for stability, optimizes for the highest floor.
Right.
And I think when you take a non-linear path, that almost necessitates that there is a level of up and down that is correlated with it. That there's going to be valleys, there's going to be peaks, and if you don't want that, then go for the linear path. Follow things that would follow that, which is great. But people who follow that and then are unhappy with that path, there's a level of risk associated with it, right? Starting your own business, leaving a traditional job, there's some risk associated with it. And, I think another pitfall is like the glorification of the entrepreneurial life. We talked about this, I guess, yesterday.
Yeah.
But that's definitely there too, where it may take some time to actually build up what you really believe in. And it's kind of like, I view it as a test. It's like the universe is telling me, or asking me, testing me, like, well, do you actually want to do this, or was this just another fad, another phase that, like, all right, you were done with this when it got tough, like you just left and you started your own thing, and that was actually an excuse to, be on your own and not do things together with a company that, when there were tough things, you just like moved on to the next thing, like. And so it's like actually testing, well, is this what you actually want to do? So I think that comes into play. But yeah, so going back to this linear and non-linear path, there is an acceptance of crisis that has to be there. And I think it's really nice because crisis has kind of, I think there's a connotation of crisis as like a negative connotation, where it's a bad thing.
It's also a growth opportunity.
Exactly. So it's actually, I think,
try and experiment.
I don't know if this is fully true, but it roughly translates. I think I read somewhere where it roughly translates into in Chinese. I want to say there's like 2 Chinese characters that relate to it, and they write it as danger as one, and then opportunity as the other. And so I think our connotation of it is the danger. It's like economic crisis, a financial crisis, whatever it is. And so like also it's danger. But in this midlife crisis, this quarter life crisis, it's really an opportunity to learn who you are, and learn what you don't want and learn what you want, and who you are not and who you are.
It provides you with more data. with more
Exactly.
experience, with more information. And that helps you with figuring out what to do, what not to do moving forward.
Yeah. And so I think we really need to lean into the crisis. Um, my brother has, I'm sure he took it from somewhere, but it was like, instead of, we try to focus on feeling better when we need to get better at feeling. So same, theme there.
Yeah.
Let's understand that there's going to be ups and downs, and let's lean into it. Understand that the downs are really just the momentum that's going to really build up the ups.
Yeah.
So I think really leaning into the crisis stages of our life. If you're into astrology, I'm not yet, but I was talking about this recently, or just listening into it, which is like I think the Saturn's return. These like aspects, these times periods in our life, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, where there are going to be downs, but it's going to be great, tremendous learning opportunities for us, whether that's career, relationships, family, financial, whatever it is. So I think really leaning into those and like actually being aware of those things, and then what are those learnings that we can then apply to the next stage of our life. So like this non-linear path, like how can we lean into the ups and downs of a non-linear path?
Yeah. So a few things I want to comment on, build off of there. But before we do that, it's time for the next round of Alabama trivia questions.
I'm ready.
All right. This city lends its name to a prominent HBCU and to a group of airmen who fought valiantly in World War II.
Tuskegee.
That is correct. And
Oh,
who founded the Tuskegee Institute, do you know?
Tuskegee.
Booker T. Washington.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I knew that.
Yeah, who wrote Up from Slavery, Booker T. Washington.
That's right. Yeah.
Next.
Yes.
This Alabamian is associated with the development of a large number of products and uses connected to the peanuts.
Oh, George Washington Carver.
That is correct.
Let's go.
Next.
Okay.
This Alabama city is located right next to Columbus, Georgia, and thus is the only place in the state of Alabama that unofficially is on Eastern time, with the rest of the state being on the Central time zone.
Gulf Shores.
Phoenix City.
Oh.
Last question before I provide some non-trivia related commentary.
Yes.
This beach destination along the Gulf Coast is sometimes in jest referred to as the Redneck Riviera.
Gulf Shores.
That is correct.
Was that lined up before I said Gulf
Yes,
Shores?
that was lined up before
okay.
you said that. Yes, yes.
Nice.
So a few things to touch on there. So when you talked about not knowing what a computer science major does, or someone working in computer science or IT does, or a math major or anything of that sort, I've, for several years now, thought it would be a good idea for young people who are, at this age where they're making these sorts of decisions to either, reach out to potential employers or at least to people who are working in areas that might interest them, and take a day or two to shadow them over a Thanksgiving break, over a spring break, over a Christmas break, things like that, over the summer between their junior and senior years of high school. Find a way to at least see what it looks like. If you think you might want to be a TV news anchor, find someone at the TV station who will let you go observe a producer. Or if you think that you want to work in investment banking, find someone at Citibank that will help you, that will give you a tour of their facilities. Or if you think you want to work in oil and gas, find someone at Shell, or whatever the case may be. But find a way to observe, shadow, ask questions of someone in 8, 10, 12 areas that seem appealing to figure out what you want to do. Another thing that I've thought to be a good idea for many is to not go to college right away. That doesn't mean don't go to college at all, But instead of going to college when you're 18 and you have no money in your bank account and no life experience and no experience in the world outside of the classroom, take a few years and have it be a combination of getting some jobs to save up some money, maybe do some volunteer work, travel. You can combine volunteer work and travel, of course, but see how places other than your own neighborhood function. See what it's like to work with some other people who didn't go to your school and don't have a similar background. Save some money up, and also try to arrange some apprenticeships, some internships, even if it's unpaid, even if it's just fetching coffee for someone who works at a major accounting firm. Okay, well, you'll at least see what it's a day in the life of an employee in the accounting firm looks like, right? Figure out these different ways to interact with and engage with different lines of work that might seem appealing. So that way, when you go to college at 21, 22, you have money saved up, you have experiences in other parts of the world and in other communities, you have some volunteer efforts, you have some unique things to put on your resume, some unique experiences, and you actually know what it looks like to work in 8, 10, 12 different lines of work. So then when you decide that you want to be a math major, computer science major, physics major, mechanical engineering major, whatever the case is, you actually know what that means. Like, you know where that is potentially headed, and you would have some contacts in that area. If you end up deciding to pursue that area, pursue a career in that area, you already have a little bit of a mini network, some companies, some employers who know who you are that will help it, make it easier theoretically for you to get your foot in the door. So I've long thought that to be a good idea. No one seems to want to do that, or at least it seems to be pretty rare, but I think that makes a lot of sense, as opposed to just going to college when you're 18, acquire some experiences, some money, some insights, learn about yourself, learn about the world, learn about different careers, professions, industries, and then spend the money and the time going to college. And money you can get back, time you can't, right? But neither should just be wasted with minimal direction and goals in mind that actually align with what you think you want to do and what actually makes sense for you. Another thing, you talked about the stability that's associated with the millennial path, the millennial dream. And of course, we've discussed this throughout this discussion, but it's not that stable. Like, even if you exceed all sorts of expectations and have tremendous and glowing performance evaluations, you never know when you're going to get pink slipped, right? Especially if you're like in oil and gas. I mentioned that's a very cyclical area, very volatile. So you never know when there's going to be a drop in oil prices, and then your company is laying off of, tens of thousands of employees. Even if you've been a standout employee, you could still be laid off, right? You never know when there's going to be that health problem, when there's going to be that expense that comes up that you don't expect. It's not as stable as it sounds. In theory, it's stable, but then you get laid off. Then you end up with a degree that's useless, that's not really helping you get a job, but that's not really in an area that you found all that interesting anyways. When there are going to be these unexpected expenses, when there are going to be family health issues, you don't know what's going to pop up. So although we think of it as stable, it's really not that stable. And yet another reason for a lot of people that it makes sense not to go down that millennial path is if you're doing something that's inherently unstable anyways, do something that's going to bring you joy and fulfillment and value in your own life, while also bringing value and fulfillment ideally for others as well. So it's not linear. As I've said before, life is not linear. We think of it as this linear process, but for most people, that's not how it works out. Life never happens as you expect. Great line from possibly my favorite show, the Wonder Years, the final episode. But life never happens as you think it will. It never happens as you expect. You also, at least hinted at this, but this idea of losing, of crisis, right? You talked about crisis. I mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk earlier, but he loves talking about how much he learns from losing, how valuable losses are. Why he hates 8th place trophies for kids, because it's the losses that really force you to take a step back and reflect and reevaluate and learn what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like, what you don't like, what worked, what didn't work. And then you figure out how to grow and adjust and improve and change out of that. And it's the losing in a lot of ways that paves the way for the winning, for the successes, for the triumphs that we experience in life. Michael Malice, the famous author and commentator, I heard him quote, I think he was quoting one of his friends, and he said, in quoting one of his friends, if it's hysterical, it's historical, right? And if it's hysterical, if it's this time of great crisis, of terrible tragedy, of terrible occurrence, it's also providing you with data points and with information. And maybe in that moment you don't realize how, but it is going to shape who you are as a person, and in a lot of cases allow you to grow and improve. That's not to say seek out losing. That's not to say seek out tragedy, seek out terrible occurrences and crises. Of course not. But in a lot of cases, it's that business that goes under. It's that relationship that's severed. It's that partnership that doesn't work out. It's those things that we don't want to happen, that we don't wish for, that seem like the end of the world at the time, that allow us to grow and give us data and information and ideas and insights that help us succeed and triumph at an even greater level than we could have imagined in future steps.
Yeah, the relationship with failure, like the word failure, and then the actual experiences of what we perceive as failures for ourselves, and even the judgment of failures of others that we perceive. Right. I think that's been a big thing for me to actually understand and feel, okay, how do I feel about failure? And what have been the failures in my life? And actually journal about them, talk about them with others, and like understand what were those failing experiences that I had. And I do, well, you said don't do it, but I kind of do it, which was seek out failures, not with the intention of failing per se, but it is like, hey, like let me try as many things as I can. So, and knowing, hey, I'm probably not gonna. This is my first rep at it. As with most things, first reps are probably not gonna be as good as the 100th rep at something. So, like going into it, knowing that it's not gonna be perfect, but it is a rep. Which is better than...
It's a lot better to try and fail, but have something and put it out there and see where it goes, than to just sit on an idea and not put it out there at all because you don't think it's perfect, and then you just never end up moving forward with anything, always coming up with reasons and excuses with why it's flawed and failed, as opposed to just doing it, take your lumps, but then you get better. Like anything else, you get better as you practice. You become a better basketball player by going to the gym and practicing. You become a better piano player by sitting down with music and practicing. You become a better artist by practicing. And you become a better business person, better at friendships, at relationships, at going through life, at figuring out what people want, what people don't want, what you want, what you don't want. You become better at all those things and learn all those things by doing, by trying, by attempting.
Yeah. So as we're closing in, what is one thing, and after we answer, let's obviously finish up with trivia.
Yes.
With that mindset of failing and learning, what is one thing that you're looking forward to trying and knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be perfect at it the first time, and I'll probably fail, but I'm going to learn from it and go from there? What's one or two things that come to mind that in that category?
Before we do that, I'm going to ask two more Alabama trivia questions.
Okay.
Because I actually want to wrap up in a slightly different way.
I see. Okay.
So, the first one, Bloody Sunday, is associated with a civil rights march from which Alabama city to which other Alabama city?
Montgomery?
That was the destination city. What was the origin city?
Selma?
That is correct.
Oh, very nice.
Next.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr. is famous for having written a letter from a jail in which Alabama city?
Ooh. Mobile.
Birmingham.
Oh, it was Birmingham. Okay.
I feel like we need to have the final trivia question be one that you answer correctly.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to end on Mobile since we're here in
So,
Mobile. But
all right. So, the University of South Alabama is located in which city?
Mobile.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
South Alabama Jaguars, USA.
Let's go.
You get to be patriotic in the process.
Yes.
USA, yes. Yeah, so I think the things that we talked about when we recorded yesterday in Biloxi, our chat adjacent to GPT, that I'm sure was not published yesterday, but
No.
was we recorded yesterday. But like starting this new podcast, the Adam Kamak Show, to have these interviews and conversations about people's journeys and stories to finding and doing things that they find enjoyable, fulfilling. Building up career coaching practice, right? Continuing to build my business, right? All of these things are going to have inherent failures. Nothing goes right initially, but just putting myself out there, trying, experimenting. I know that there are going to be failures, but I'm excited about doing this. I'm excited about the process. Which is not always something I've said about things that I've been working on or doing in a lot of cases because I was forced to do something. But continuing to get started with things and grow things. There will be failures, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes. What about you? What's something that you've talked about writing your book, right? I want to write a book down the road. Yeah. I want to give paid speeches, do more public speaking. You and I will joke a lot about Taylor Conroy and his employees and his company sending way too many text messages and emails once you get on their list, if you opt not to leave their list. But trying to give a TEDx talk and going down that process, there will be a lot of failures, but I'm excited. I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, for me, speaking, I'm looking forward to sharing my thoughts almost in an unprompted way, because I feel like I'm better at asking questions and then answering questions rather than, hey, so I give like a 30-minute like talk on something. And so I feel like that's going to be a bigger part of what I'm doing in the future, whether it's related to a book or other topics that I've done workshops on, stuff like that. I like the interactive, engaging aspect of any sort of session. So I'm looking forward to the failing that'll come along with speaking. And the first few times, I'm gonna surround myself and record it / surround myself with people who can give feedback on it, who've done the thing before. So I'm getting feedback from people who've actually been in the arena of speaking. So, and in a one-to-many setting, I feel like I can have those conversations and those dialogues or monologues in an individual setting like this, but having it in a group setting, a large school setting, conference setting, is going to be the next step for me to hone in my communication craft.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I think a good way to wrap up here, I know we did this when we were in Biloxi, and I said I was kind of stealing this from Michael Malice. So I'll ask this question. We'll put a little bit of a twist on it, make it kind of a two-parter, and then I'll answer as well. But what has been your favorite part of this episode? And what has been your favorite part, or do you think will be your favorite part during the remainder of our time being in Mobile, being in the state of Alabama?
Favorite part of this conversation has been just the new thoughts that have come up that I haven't even shared, honestly. I was like, oh, these are the good things to think about, write about, share in some way. Whether it's, thinking about the pitfalls. I think that's a great question to think about. What are these pitfalls that I'm facing that I can be aware of, that other people are aware of, that they're not aware of? So the ideas that are coming about, and I'm definitely gonna re-listen to this and then take some notes and then create some content on that for sure. And then going forward, the rest of Alabama, I guess the thing that we're going to be doing is going to the USS Alabama. So
Correct.
I'm looking forward to that and learning about that like we did yesterday at another museum in Mississippi.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
about you?
for me, I guess my favorite part of the episode, I kind of share this with you, but I feel like there have been a lot of insights, a lot of ideas that we've thrown out there, and there are a lot of things that I will intend to explore more in the future in blog posts and articles, book chapters, other podcast episodes and interviews and things of that sort, speeches. So there's a lot of a lot of material that can potentially come out of this that I can use in the future. So that's been great, having those ideas and those insights put out there. And certainly some things that you've said that I hadn't thought about before that prompted me to think of other things that I might not ordinarily think about initially. So that's been great. As far as being in Mobile in the state of Alabama, I've spent a decent amount of time in Tuscaloosa, spent some time in Birmingham, but I've never really explored Alabama outside of kind of that I-20-ish corridor in the north. So I've driven through Mobile a few times in the past on I-10, going to and from Florida, coming from Houston, but never left the interstate in Mobile and really done anything. So excited to get to see Mobile, explore Mobile. We've done some of that already. Do a little more of that today. USS Alabama, as you mentioned, and then we'll head on to Pensacola. So excited to get to explore another city in Alabama here with Mobile.
Let's do it. Well, appreciate y'all listening to another episode of the Side Sides Podcast, Casually Profound series, and the Someday is Today. State 9 out of 50 done
with the sub series.
We're going to get to double digits tomorrow. Later today.
Later today is correct. I think I said tomorrow. Yeah, later today.
Yeah, later today. Hell yeah. Appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all next time.
Thanks.